Okay, good morning. This is on Friday. I didn't forget the date. Look on my phone. Today's May 29th, and it's about 1:15. And I received some emails about some questions on 1.3, 1.4, 1.3, and 1.4, I think. So I thought I would cover those questions and record them for those of you that need them. The first question is about the height of a baseball or a ball thrown in the air, and it basically gives you a quadratic. And I told y'all, anytime you have a quadratic and you want to just learn more and more, then just do complete the square and do everything. So H is equal to F of T equals, and I'm going to turn it around, negative 16 t squared plus 288t. And this looks like the throwing of a ball, because that usually at negative 16t squared, that's throwing a ball up in the air. And it's going to form a parabola, basically. And we're going to graph it. But first thing I'm going to do is set it equal to 0. So negative 16t squared plus 288t plus blank is equal to 0 plus blank. You don't have to do this. You could factor out a negative 16, and I have no idea. You're going to have to factor it out anyway. But I'm going to do the vertex and the x-intercepts, so that way, that's why I do complete the square. So I'm just going to take my calculator, and I'm going to take 288 divided by 16. And okay, it will not. So we're going to have to find 8. Let's see if 8 will go into both. So 288 divided by 8, 36. Yeah. So, well, 2 will go into 36. So there must be something bigger. There must be something bigger that goes into 288 and 16. Let me think. 8, 9, 10. No. I think there's something else that goes into both 16 and 288. Let me see. Let me check that again. 288 divided by 16. Yeah, I thought so. 18. I must have typed something wrong in the calculator. Oh, yeah, I typed 0.288. Okay, so I'm going to factor out a 16. You could do another way. You could do this. You could do negative 16, and that would be t squared minus 18 is equal to 0. You could do it that way. And that would give you t squared is equal to 18, and then take the square root of 18. You could do it that way. But I do completing the square whenever I can, because it gives you everything. So negative 16 t squared, oops, I'm sorry, factor out that 16, and that's going to be plus 18t plus blank is equal to 0 plus negative 16 times blank. Now we're going to complete the square, and I'm going to do that in another color. So I'm going to take the 18, and you always divide it by 2, and you always square it. So that's 9 squared, which is 81, and 81 goes here and there. But you can't complete the square until you get this number in front of the t squared equal to 1. So that's why I had to factor out the negative 16 first. And that gives you negative 16, shortcut number 1, t plus 9 quantity squared is equal to 0, negative 16 times 81. I have no idea. So negative 16 times 81 is going to be 1296. And then I'm going to divide. Okay, there's your vertex. Our vertex is negative 9 and positive 1296. Okay, something tells me That's not right. Up, negative. Supposed to be a negative right here. And how did I know that that wasn't right? And that would be a positive. Because when you're throwing a ball, your horizontal is not going to be negative distance. That's how I knew something was wrong. And I'll show you in just a minute when we graph it, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So there's your vertex. So at 9 seconds, that ball is almost at 1,300 feet in the air and it's starting to come down. Okay, that's at the highest point at 9 seconds. I'm assuming that t is 9 seconds, or t is in seconds. So now we're going to solve. So I'm going to take that 1296 and I'm going to divide by negative 16. That gives me 81. So t minus 9, quantity squared, is equal to 81. T minus 9 is equal to positive or negative 9, because the square root of both sides. And t is equal to 9 plus 9 and negative 9 plus 9. Well, 9 plus 9 is 18, so that's when it hits the ground. And negative 9 plus 9 is 0. That's when you throw it. That's when it starts. That's your initial point. Okay? So that's your x-intercepts. So now I can draw this thing. And drawing it is half the battle. I'm going to draw it a little bit bigger than normal because it's in the first quadrant. Why is it in the first quadrant? Because you can't throw a ball and it have a negative distance. You can't throw a ball and it go underground. Okay? So here's 0, 0. And we know a ball looks like this. And it comes down like this. And we know that this point is 18. Where it hits the ground, 18 seconds. And at 9 seconds, we know that it's at the vertex, which is 9 seconds, and the height is 1296. And I'm going to assume that's feet, but we'll just leave it at 1296. Now, at this point, you can do pretty much anything you want. At this point, you can take your calculator and punch it in. That's what we're fixing to do right now. Handy dandy calculator, and y is equal to clear. I always clear it because these new calculators, when you hit delete, you delete 5 or 6 things. You don't delete one thing. Anyway, negative 16 t x squared plus 288t. And graph. And I want it in the first quadrant so you can see everything. So I'm going to, I must not have done so. Is that stat plot on? Hold on. Stat plot, all those are off. So I must have typed something in wrong. So let me check. Y is equal. It's conspiracy. Negative 16x squared plus 288x. Okay. Graph. I'm going to go ahead and hit zoom, standard 6. I've been doing some weird stuff with the zoom fit. I don't know what's going on. Zoom fit would be 0, I believe. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to move it over to the first quadrant. So I'm going to do the window, and I'm going to make the x-axis be -1. Now we know that our highest value on the x-axis is 16, so I'm going to make it 20. And then -1 on the y-axis. And then we know our highest number that we need to worry about there is 1296. So I'm going to put mine at 1400 or 1300. Oops, 1300. Now hit graph. And you should be able to see the whole graph. There you go. And at this point, you can hit table, second table, and you can get anything it asks for there. I don't know why it's doing that. Let me see if I've changed it for another class. Yep. Table start, I don't know, start at 0 since it's in the first quadrant. And we want ones. There we go. Now hit second table. That looks a little better. So at 0, you're at 0. At 1 second, you're at 272. And at 9 seconds, let's see if 9 is your top. Yep, there it is. And then, of course, you can find any other. Just go down, and you can find any other. Well, after 16 seconds or 18 seconds, it shouldn't be anything because it's going to go below the x-axis. So it's going to give you negative numbers there. There you go. Because the ball is going under the ground. Now, you might could do that with a bullet, but not a ball. It ain't going to go below the ground. Not 300 feet. 300 feet, it's not. Okay, so you just take and that's how you do that problem. One other thing, the horizontal line test also dictates that if you draw a horizontal line through that, and I think it might ask that, you draw a horizontal line and it's more than 2 intersections, it is not a one-to-one function. That means like a 45-degree angle. A 45-degree angle is a one-to-one function. For every one you go left or right, one you go up, right up, right up. That's a one-to-one function. This is not a one-to-one function because it goes up this way and then it comes down. So anything that goes up and comes down is not a one-to-one function. So that should be that question. Okay, the next question I got was, I don't know what the directions were because I think it was, yeah, find the, I want you to, I don't know why they put the directions in here like they do. Find the inverse find the inverses or something like that. They make the directions confuse the student. Find the inverses or something of that effect, and it's quadratic. F of x is equal to x squared minus 8x plus 8. And of course, this is completing the square. So x squared minus 8x plus blank is equal to negative 8 plus blank. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. X minus 4, quantity squared, is equal to 8. And you need to put this in intercept notation. Remember I showed you, you can get your vertex 2 ways. You can either take the opposite of both, or you can put it in intercept notation. And in this problem, you want to put it in intercept notation by putting f of x in front of it, and then equals x minus 4 quantity squared minus 8. That's intercept notation right there. Now, once you get it into that, now you can do the inverse. Y is equal to x minus 4 quantity squared minus 8. Switch the x and y. And now solve for y. Now solve for y. I'm going to go over here and solve for y. Okay, so x plus 8 is equal to y minus 4 quantity squared. Take the square root of both sides. And that's going to be the square root of x plus 8 is equal to y minus 4. And then 4 plus square root, plus or minus, x plus 8 is equal to y. Now they may write that as separate, so it'd be 4 plus the square root of x plus 8 and 4 minus the square root of x plus 8. Remember, when you take the square root of anything, you got to do the positive and the negative, so that's where that comes from. And that gives you the positive and it gives you the negative. I'll take either answer, but I don't know about the homework or the test. So far, both of these are pretty good test questions. I'll take either one of these, but they probably want this one. Okay, so that's that question. And if you want to try, okay, I did. All right, this one, that's just an extra. Yeah, that's not, okay. Here's the trig functions, and I think this is 1.5, I'm not sure. But they tell you sine, I think this is one where they give you sine of the inverse cosine of 14x. And I think they want you to write it. I can't remember. No, I can't remember the actual example, but I'm just going to go through and do it. I think they want you to find they want you to find the inverse cosine. Okay. Anyway, I was expecting a 2 right here, but I might be on another question. Anyway, the first thing you're going to do is say, okay, if the inverse cosine is 14x, then that means the cosine of theta is equal to 14x over 1. Now, how did I know that 1 there? Because that's the whole number. You don't see a fraction, do you? I don't. So if that's a 14, if it's a 12, if it's a 5, then there's a 1 right there. If it's a 2/3, then it's 2 over 3. So in this case, and we all know cosine, Oscar had a hunk. We know, draw your handy-dandy triangle. We know that the 1 is the hypotenuse and 14x is the adjacent, because little man always got his foot on the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So therefore, the opposite is going to be the square root of 1 minus 14x squared. I'm going to rewrite it like this. Oops, there we go. Or 1 square root of 1 minus, I think it's 196x squared. Okay, so you draw your triangle, and then you take the sine. Well, what is the sine? The sine is equal to Oscar had, and that's going to be the square root of 1 minus 196x squared over 1, which is square root of 1 minus 196x squared, and that should be your answer. And all I did was I found the cosine right here, and then that is in this, and then I took the sine of that, which is that. Here's another one. I think that's the same one. Yeah, that's the same one. Here's another one where you actually have a 2 in front of it. I got a couple of these. I don't know if they're the same or not, but we'll do it. Sine of 2 cosine -1 of 20x. Okay, and they say in the directions you can use sine of 2 theta is equal to 2 sine theta cosine theta. Which that basically means that I can take sine of 2 theta, so this is theta, I can do that as theta, which means the cosine of 20x is equal to theta. So I can make that cosine of theta because I'm going to write this right below because you may not understand what I'm doing. This right here looks like this. Sine of 2 theta. And theta is equal to that. So if theta, and I'll just write that out, if theta is equal to cosine -1 of 20x, then divide by cosine -1, divide by cosine of -1, that basically gives you cosine of theta is equal to, because the -1 goes upstairs, be cosine of theta is equal to 20x over, it's the whole number, 1. And now you got the same question that you just did. Okay, so take my handy dandy. My man is right here, because that's where usually your theta is going to be, unless they put it up here, and that's a different question. But anyway, he's always on the adjacent and the hypotenuse. So what is this? Oscar had a hunk, so that's going to be 1, and that's going to be 20x. Therefore, this is 1 minus 400x squared. Okay, I got the cosine of this. Now remember that 2's out there. So technically, you can do the sine and multiply it by 2 because I just found this. Okay, so I could say sine of 2 and then 20x over 1. I could do that. 20x. Yeah, we could do that. Or I could go ahead and take the sine and multiply it by 2. I think I'll do that. I'll take the sine of this and multiply it by 2. So the sine of theta is equal to Oscar had. So that would be this over this. Square root of 1 minus 400x squared over 1. So if I put everything together, I'll get the sine, the 2, and then the sine is the square root of 1 minus 400x squared times the cosine, which is 20x. And then 20x times 2 is 40x. So my final answer should be 40x square root of 1 minus 400x squared. That should be your answer. I'll go ahead and do a cosine for you. I think this was another one sent to me. This one, and this one is not bad. This is a good test question coming up because it's not as bad as these identities. The cosine of theta is equal to negative 24 over 25, and it's in quadrant 2. Now, I'm going to tell you a little secret. I used to be so confused when I was in trig and they would throw that quadrant out there. I was like, "How and what does that mean? What? I don't understand." Until I finally put the Cartesian coordinate system with the tangent, and I said, "Oh." And what I do is I just draw a picture. Because I tell all my students in trig, when in doubt, draw a picture. And I don't care if it's a graph or if it's just a basic triangle. Draw a picture. That's why I tell y'all in the limits, graph it. Graph it, put a picture of the graph on your paper, and then look at it. All right, so I got in quadrant 2, so this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, and this is 4. So it's in this quadrant, so that means I've got to do I'm going to draw a different color. So I know my graph is going to look like this. And I know this is a negative A, and this is a positive, and the hypotenuse is always positive. And I know Oscar had, so 25 is always positive, so therefore the opposite, a hunk, I'm sorry, Oscar had a hunk. The adjacent has to be negative, and it is right there, so that's 24. So now the first thing I do, and any trig student would know, that as soon as you do two sides of a triangle, you need to find that third side. So a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. And we need whatever you want to call it, a or b. Since this is a, we'll call that b. Okay, so b squared is equal to c squared minus a squared, and b is equal to the square root of c squared minus a squared, which is equal to b is equal to the square root of 25 squared minus 24 squared. Now, a lot of people say, well, Hubert, you forgot the negative. Well, it doesn't matter, because what's negative 24 squared? Is positive whatever it is. I didn't do it, just did it on the calculator. You come out with, I mean, you know how to do this, 7. So we know that this is equal to 7. Now, all you got to do is just plug and chug into whatever they're asking for. Whether it's a sine is equal to Oscar had, so that's equal to 7 over 25. What else? Tangent. Tangent is equal to Oscar had a hunk of apple, so that's going to be negative 7 over 24. And then after that, you can just do your reciprocals and flip them over. I'm just going to do the 3. You got this one. There's the cosine, sine, cosine, tangent. And after you got the sine, cosine, and tangent, you just flip them. And there's no radicals, so you don't have to worry about rationalizing. So that's how you do that problem. That's a good test question. And the last one. But the last question I got right here is a graphing question. And there may be one like this on a test, but it's real easy because you do everything with the formula. With the basic trig credentials, and then you just put it on the graph. So it's not like, let me give you an example. If I gave you f of x is equal to 2 times x minus 3 quantity squared plus 2, then you would say, okay, that's a parabola. It's got a vertical shift of 2 up and 3 to the right. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. And it's going upward and it's skinny. So it looks something like that. Okay? You could do that with your family of graphs. You can do it with a line. You can do it with a nonlinear. You can do it with x cubed. You can do it with absolute value. You can do it with logarithms. You can do it with exponentials. And you can do it with trig. Here's what they're going to give you. F of x is equal to 2 sine of 2x minus pi over 4 plus 3. Now, if you don't remember your trig, then I'm going to go over it right quick. I'm going to give you different colors. This right here, with what I would call A or orientation, basically is your amplitude. Just put amp for amplitude. This right here is B. And B is included in your period. B is equal to 2. And your period is equal to, I wrote it down, 2 pi over B, which in this case is 2 pi over 2, which in this case the period is pi. Okay? And the rest is just like your family of graphs. That's the only difference. Okay? And the rest, this is your horizontal shift, which is pi over 4 to the right, which you would punch it in. That's horizontal shift. Pi over 4 to the right. And you would type it in your, it'll say horizontal shift, and it'll give you a little box. And you might have to copy pi because I couldn't find a pi button on the graph. So what I did is in the period, it has a pi right there. So I copied it, I highlighted it, and I put Control C, and then I Control V in the horizontal shift and put it over 4. And then this is your vertical shift. And that is, and this is also called the phase shift. And this is 3 up. And luckily, you don't have to worry about all that because the graph that they supply you with, all you have to do is type these in. And there's the 4 things that you type in. So that is it. I would make sure you pick the sine curve. I think it's the first curve besides the parabola. It's the one that goes like that. Okay, make sure you hit that curve. And I think that's all the questions that were sent. And that's out of 1.3 and 1.4. So I hope that helps. And if I don't hear from you, have a good weekend. If I do hear from you, then we will talk or whatever the case may be. And now I'm going to shut this thing down. If I can get the little square to come up. Stop recording.